Hello everyone, and welcome to Sunup. I'm Lyndall Stout. Extended cold and below freezing temperatures are affecting agriculture in a number of ways across Oklahoma. We begin today looking at the wheat crop. Here's Sunup's Dave Deacon and our Extension Small Grain Specialist, Dr. Amanda Silva.
Growing up, I always loved a good snow day, but here lately we've had a lot of these colder, snowy temperatures. Amanda, what does the colder, snowy conditions, ice conditions do to the wheat?
So, Dave, it's difficult for us to know the impact of this cold temperature on the wheat right now, because that will depend on a lot of factors, including the developmental stage of the plants, soil moisture, the amount of snow cover, and how low the temperatures you get and for how long. So if we get that snow cover, that will help to insulate the crop and protect it from these very low temperatures.
You mentioned the developmental stages in there and how the cold weather can impact those. Where are we mostly across the state, and how will that cold weather impact those?
So I would say that most of the wheat in Oklahoma right now is still at that dormant phase. And we measured, last week in our report in the blog, we measured that some plants were at first hollow stem. So those plants could be in a more like susceptible situation, because the growing point would be more exposed to the low temperatures, and that would make them more susceptible. So plants that are far behind in growth, so they have that growing point still protected, still close to the soil, and not as exposed and not as susceptible to injuries.
So in some ways, it's kind of it's good that we're getting this cold event now, and say not 3 or 4 weeks down the line, and the moisture that comes with it will be good for the crop too.
Exactly. The more advanced in growth, the more exposed that growing point is, and more susceptible to this very low temperatures the crop is. So yes, as we enter in the growing season, we don't want very low temperatures from now on.
As it warms up, producers are going to be out in the field. What should they be looking for to see if they actually did sustain any damage to their crop?
Yeah, so that's what I would say. Like, just wait a few weeks to actually go and take a look at the crop, because I think we'll start seeing some possible damages as the crop starts to pick it up and it starts to grow back again. Just look at the crown. If they were already advanced in growth, look at the growing point, and those are the parts, like split up the stem and look inside to see if the crown and the growing point are still viable.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Amanda Silva. And for more information about what she discussed today, go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
Welcome to the Mesonet Weather Report. I'm Wes Lee. Last week's storm was one for the record books as the polar vortex arrived. The coldest air arrived Tuesday morning with several record cold temps. This map at 7 a.m. shows the entire state at negative numbers. Our soil temperatures on that same morning had about the northwestern third of the state showing below freezing temperatures at 4 inches under sod. Due to the storm and communication issues, we had about 12 sites not reporting during this time frame. During Mesonet's tenure since 1994, the most sites below freezing at 4 inches under sod came on February the 4th, 1996. Under bare soil at 4 inches, we got much colder on Tuesday, with about 90% of the sites showing freezing temperatures, some going down as far as 13 degrees at Weatherford. Again, we didn't break a Mesonet bare soil temperature record on number of sites below freezing, as this happened in January of 2018. Why did we not break the records? It was simply because of the snow cover across the state. Here at Cherokee, you can see the brown line, the 4-inch bare soil, fluctuating between day and night until the snow fell on the 14th, marked by the blue arrow. That acted as insulation, and soil temperatures did not go much lower, even with record extreme air temps shown by the red arrow. Now here's Gary with more on these record-breaking low air temperatures.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, we just finished one of the coldest periods on record in our state history. What's that do for the drought situation? Let's take a look at the Drought Monitor map and see what we have. Well, really, it's the same map that we've seen the last few weeks, just a few changes, a little bit more abnormally dry conditions instead of moderate drought. But really, in this type of state, when we have the frigid weather and the snow that hasn't melted yet, it really puts the Drought Monitor map also in a frozen state as well. So maybe once that snow melts, we will get to see some improvement in those areas across the southwest and also up in the far northwest in the western panhandle. We can see from the National Snowfall Analysis that much of the southern U.S. has had snow. It looks to me like all but the Florida folks in the lower 4-8 have had snowfall. For Oklahoma, we've had areas from 2 to nearly 3 foot of snow across much of central and the northwestern quarter of the state. In other parts of the state, more than 6 inches to more than a foot. So a very productive winter as far as snowfall goes this year. Let's take a look to next week. What do we see? Well, for the temperature, we see either increased odds of above normal conditions or near normal conditions. So none of that dark blue color that we don't want to see showing up for next week. So hopefully we can get some warmer weather in here, melt this snow, and get spring underway. Unfortunately, when it comes to precipitation, we see increased odds of below normal precipitation across all of the southern U.S., including Oklahoma, especially the western half of the state. So unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to get an abundance of moisture as we get into next week. However, we can let that snowfall start to melt and percolate into the soils, and that should help us a little bit. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Well, the last time we talked to Paul Beck, we were talking about how cattle can handle acute weather that doesn't stay around for very long. Well, Paul, this weather didn't really turn out that way. So, after an extended long period of really cold weather, how do cattle handle that?
So there's several things we got to worry about with extended cold spells like this. When initially we were talking about a 3 or 4 day, just acute cold snap, and that can, get cattle to where they will just quit eating. They're going to, huddle up and just stay out of the elements as much as they can. Right now, we've got, we're at 15 degrees. We've been below freezing for several days. A cow in good condition, like these cows with a thick hair coat, they're good down to about 32 degrees is their lower critical temperature. When we get below that, we're going to have to start making make some changes to help them handle that extra cold. When we're down below that, it's about 1% increase in energy requirements for every degree below their lower critical temperature. So if we've got a thin cow with a thinner hair coat, their lower critical temperature is going to be up 40. So as we get down close to zero for the temperature, they're going to be about 40% below their requirements. If we don't have a windbreak or something to keep that wind chill from working on them, we're going to be 15% higher than that. So we're looking at 50 to 60% increase in nutrient requirements or energy requirements for them to handle that cold. Increase their supplementation, increase the quality of hay. We're going to start losing body condition over this period of time. If we could feed some high quality hay close to where they're going to want to be, like in this protected area, they may actually increase their hay intake by about 20 to 50%. So it's really important to get these cattle some cover, windbreaks. If we don't have some trees or geographic features, we can build a quick and easy windbreak just by putting a row of low quality hay and leave it in the round bale there and just let them have it. And we spend a lot of time talking about reducing hay waste. This type of weather, we don't want to worry about reducing hay waste. Let's, put some hay out on the ground, let them spread around. If they do have calves, those calves can get in cover and get up under that hay to get out of the elements.
And you know, the past week it has been negative 35-degree wind chill in some parts of the state. So that's obviously going to affect the water. Water's going to freeze over. So, you know, a lot of producers know what to do, but for those producers out there that are really kind of struggling, like, you know, how do I like get, you know, have water available to their cattle? What do they need to do? So
if we've got, you know, the best case scenario would be a freeze-proof tank with groundwater coming in. It's going to be warmer water. They'll actually go and they'll increase water intake when it's warmer than the outside temperatures. But if we're cutting ice on a pond, you know, we're going to decrease water intake. But if they don't have any water available, you know, that's tied to, you know, water intake is tied to milk production, intake of hay and supplements, and fermentation. So they've got to have water in their rumen and water available to, you know, utilize the forage that we're trying to feed them. So it's important to have water available. You know, a lot of times when temperatures are this cold, we can chop ice on the pond, you know, and get some cattle to come and drink, but then within an hour or so, it's going to be frozen back. So you may have to go out and chop ice a couple of times during the day, or at least every day, to get cattle to where they can get water and consume it.
All righty, thanks, Paul. Paul Beck, Extension Beef Cattle Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
One of the questions that I've had through the years of working for the Cooperative Extension Service is about the impact of cold weather in late gestation cows and what that might mean in terms of birth weight and therefore calving difficulty. And of course, that's a subject that's really difficult to research. One of the few things that we know about the effects of weather in late gestation on birth weights of calves, we know about heat, that cows that gestate in very hot weather, fall calving cows, often have lighter birth weights than do cows that gestate later into the fall or winter months. The only research trial that I know of that really looks at the impact of cold weather on birth weights came from the University of Nebraska, their North Platte station, back in the mid-90s. What they did was kept track of the records of 400 replacement heifers over a 3-year period of time. They compared the birth weights of the calves born to those heifers in relationship with the average temperature that occurred in the months of December, January, and February. These heifers were calving in March and April. Across those 3 years, they found a difference in the average temperature of about 11 degrees. And as they then kept track of the birth weights of the baby calves born to those 2-year-olds, there was a corresponding difference in birth weights. The cows that actually delivered calves in the colder winter had heavier birth weights than did these young cows that had calves in the warmer winter. It was about a 1-to-1 relationship in terms of the average temperature being different, 11 degrees between the warmest and the coldest winter, and 11 pounds difference in the birth weight. Now, I don't know what the average temperature is going to be here in Oklahoma this winter, but certainly it looks like the first half of February is below normal. I would expect that we will see slightly larger birth weights, and therefore perhaps a little more calving difficulty coming from the cows that calve in late February and into March. It's not particularly good news, but if we're forewarned and ready for it, perhaps we can be a little more observant to make sure we can provide assistance for those cows or heifers that need it in this calving season. Hey, we'll look forward to visiting with you one last time next week on Sunup's Cow-Calf Corner.
We're joined now by Dr. Tom Royer, our OSU Extension entomologist. Tom, we get a lot of questions this time of year about how the cold might impact insects, especially come spring and summer in Oklahoma.
Sure.
So let's dive right into that.
All right.
What kind of questions do you get? What do people want to know?
Well, most people want to know, is this insect going to be a problem next summer because of the cold weather? My first response is always, insects can handle the cold. Some insects can do better than others. If we were to think about something like fall armyworm, their strategy is they just come up here, and when it gets too cold, it kills them, and that's the end of the season. But we have things like monarch butterflies or dragonflies. They stay up here and they migrate down to Mexico and South Texas and stay there during the winter and then come back the following spring. There are some insects that make their own antifreeze. And so one of the ones that I like to talk about is the green bug and its parasitoid wasp, the Lysophlebus. Dr. Giles and a graduate student of his looked at what they call supercooling of these insects. When is it that they actually get to the point where they start freezing, actually freezing and making ice crystals? And because of what they have in their system, they don't actually start freezing until it reaches about -9 degrees Fahrenheit, much colder. So up until that time, they can survive these kind of temperatures and be around and be able to get active when it gets warmer again.
Let's talk about bees and ants and kind of how they
sure.
work together and protect investment number one, if you will.
Absolutely. With honeybees, that's why they're storing honey, because they need to get through the winter. They use that as a food source, and the colony itself vibrates their wings and creates a little heat, and they just maintain a big ball in their of bees in their hive. So the ones on the outside work their way towards the center, and they start pushing out the ones in the center that are warmer, and they just kind of continually recycle over and over again. The only one that doesn't recycle is the queen. She's always there and being taken care of. And it's the same really with a lot of ant colonies. They'll make sure that the queen is protected, and an ant colony will plug up their outside holes so that the air cold can't get down in there, and they remain warmer because they're underground.
Can we hope for fewer ticks, fleas, mosquitoes, all of those kind of things, since we've had a longer stretch of cold than we normally would in Oklahoma?
Well, I did ask Dr. Talley about ticks, because I was a little curious about that myself. He said, well, in the wintertime, they're on their host, so they're as warm as their host is. And the only way that they would have problems is if their host died. But he said that the most important weather for ticks especially is in the springtime, and if we have mild, maybe good rain conditions, that's perfect for ticks to really build up and blow up. But and so if we have like a warmer, dry spring and summer, that's actually not good for ticks as much as it would be if we had that mild, kind of humid spring conditions.
I know spiders are always an interesting topic for folks. A lot of extension questions, questions online. Does the cold affect them in any way?
The spiders that you find in your house will always be there. If they happen to be in your house, they'll always be there. The ones that are outside, they have overwintering strategies too, but if you find them inside your house, that's because they've always been there, and they're like the box elder bugs. They're finding something to keep them there.
Okay, well, great information. We enjoyed talking about insects in the winter. Tom, thanks a lot.
I think they like the cold a lot more than I like the cold right now. So.
Definitely. Okay, we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Sometimes it's just too cold to stand out in a wheat field and talk about grain markets, so we thought we would actually move the party inside this week. Kim, what's going on in the grain markets right now?
Well, all the grains and the commodities are in sideways patterns. So you look at wheat since mid-January, that KC May contract sideways from $6.10 to $6.50. The current price is around mid-range in that. Converting that to cash, it's a minus 25 cents in northern Oklahoma and a minus 35 cents in Perryton and southern Oklahoma. Corn prices, May contract, $5.20 to $5.70. Cash is 16 cents below that in northern Oklahoma and 44 cents above that in the Perryton Panhandle area. Soybeans on the May contract, it's so trading between $13 and $14 on a sideways pattern, minus 45 cents in northern Oklahoma and a minus $1 and a nickel in southern Oklahoma and the Panhandle areas.
What are you hearing as far as projections for production in 2021?
Well, Bloomberg did a survey of 24 analysts. They've got the wheat production for 2021. This is all wheat in the United States at 1.874 billion bushels versus 1.826 billion last year. So slightly higher production there for wheat. Corn, they've got it at 15.2 billion bushels versus 14.2 billion bushels last year. So you'd expect more corn, and we may need that. Soybeans at 4.5 billion bushels versus 4.1 billion last year. And cotton at 16.4 million bales compared to 13.8 million barrels last year.
What does that mean for the projections of ending stocks?
Well, if you look at the use and production, they've got all wheat ending stocks for the United States dropping down to 769 million bushels. That should be good for prices compared to 836 last year. Corn at 1.7 billion bushels compared to 1.5, and there's that additional production. Soybeans, 179 million bushels compared to 120 million bushels this year. That means soybeans are expected to remain relatively tight. And cotton ending stocks declining to about 3.9 million bales compared to 4.3 million bales this year.
What can producers expect in the next few weeks as far as prices going on?
Well, what the market analysts are saying is that wheat prices may be a little top heavy right now. I think they could back off a little bit. They're not expecting much of any price increases in wheat. Corn prices have some potential for higher prices if China was to come in and buy a significant amount of corn. But I think they're expecting corn prices to move continually sideways. And soybean prices, there's some potential in prices. A lot depends on how that soybean crop comes in Brazil. Right now they're behind. They are getting some drier weather so they can harvest that product. And so it's how that Brazilian crop comes in. And if China comes in and buys soybean stocks are tight. And if anything happens to the soybean at 21 production or something in the southern hemisphere, or China continues to buy heavy, soybean prices could move on up.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Kim Anderson, grain marketing specialist here at Oklahoma State University. And by the way, this February is Pesticide Safety Month, and here's some information about pesticides with Oklahoma State's Kevin Shelton.
Now, whether or not you're a producer treating a large field, or you're a homeowner treating your yard for weeds or your garden, for insects or whatever, you need to be aware of what you're doing out there. So whatever you're using, herbicide, insecticide, whatever, be sure and read the label. The label contains a lot of information that you need to know, not the least of which is personal protective equipment. What you need to wear, what you need to be aware of. On farms or producers, maybe there's a restricted entry interval when you can, you have to not go back into the field for so many hours. Or if you're a homeowner, most of the products stay until dry, but you need to know that. And like on the personal protective equipment, whether you need gloves or a respirator, protective eyewear, it's a good thing to get in the habit of reading. We try every year to work with the Department of Agriculture, Food and Forestry on scheduling some unwanted pesticide disposal dates. And that's where anybody can bring in unwanted pesticides, whether it's new or old, and they can drop them off. A hazardous waste company takes those and then disposes of those in a proper way. Unfortunately, due to the COVID and other stuff, we did not have any schedule for last year, but I fully expect maybe 1 or 2 to be scheduled this year. But anybody's welcome, you know, in the state of Oklahoma to bring those unwanted pesticides in. The big thing is just read the label. Be cautious of what you're using. I hear this a lot. Oh, I don't worry about that because I'm using stuff that's safe. And if you think about it, it's a product that's designed to kill something, whether it's an insect or weed or something like that. So you really need to be careful, and you really need to read the label, and you need to protect yourself. And just, we tell people, always remember, what's on the label is the minimum that's required. You can always do better and wear more personal protective equipment.
That'll do it for us this week. A reminder, you can find us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.